Pelvic floor preparation for childbirth. So there are two ways to go about this. The first way is to do perineal massage. And the way that you go about this is to seat yourself in the loo on the toilet, which is one of the best places to be because that's where your pelvic floor automatically relaxes and releases. Or you can be on the bed with back support. And if you're on the loo, you will elevate one foot onto a little step so that you are able to reach the vaginal area. So if you're doing perineal massage, you are inserting the thumb into the vagina and your forefinger and your pointing finger will be on the outside, and you will stretch and massage the whole perineal area in a U-shaped motion, pushing down as you stretch the perineum. This is good if there is some scar tissue there, some superficial scar tissue, because that can also help soften those scars. Another way of preparing the perineum is by using this magical little device called the Epino. So the Epino is such an amazing little tool to help you prepare your perineum and your pelvic floor for childbirth. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this device came into use. The Epino has its origin story in Uganda. So in 1972, Dr. Willem Horkel was a German gynecologist and visited his friend and fellow doctor in Uganda in the hospital of Mbarabara. There he saw for the very first time how calabashes were being used to prepare the pelvic floor for childbirth. Midwives were using different sizes of dried calabashes and giving them to pregnant women to help stretch their pelvic floor to prevent injuries to the perineum. And then in 1994, after Dr. Horkel retired from gynecology, he decided it was important to look at this topic again. So he developed a balloon device in collaboration with midwives and pregnant women in 1999. And that was the very first Epino device. And so today we do not have to be inserting different size calabashes, only if you want to, but this is a much easier way of going about it. So the Epino can be used from 34 weeks onwards, and that could be used once a day until you get to 36 weeks, which is when you will be using it twice a day, all the way up until the day of your birth. And you can keep it in the device in the actual vagina area for up to 2 to 3 minutes. And then at the end of that, you can gently start to push the balloon out while holding your hand over the vagina, the vulva area. So before we get into how to do that, I just want to show you the shape of the Epino. As you can see, the Epino is almost like a peanut shape. And some of the instruction manuals around the Epino say to only insert the Epino up to this point. The problem with that is that it's this little bit of balloon is not going to do anything for your pelvic floor. And women who use it to this point say it's very difficult to keep in, it keeps slipping out. So it is much more beneficial to insert the Epino all the way. So not just to the halfway point, but all the way to the end of the balloon. However, if you have superficial scarring from your first birth, perhaps you had an episiotomy or you tore a little bit, this is a good option to use now and then as you practice with the Epino, because it can help to soften the scar tissue that is on the vulva or inside the perineum or on the pelvic floor. So that is one of the options you can use. But as a prime-up, as a first-time mom, you definitely want to insert the whole balloon into the vagina. So you might be asking, how will I know when I get to 10 centimeter diameter or 35 centimeter circumference? And you may ask, why that number? Well, that's the size of a baby's head. A baby's head generally is 10 centimeter diameter and 35 centimeters around the circumference of the head. So that's the aim with the Epino when we blow it up. So another handy tool to measure the Epino balloon is a soft, flexible measuring tape. So what we will do is first inflate the balloon outside the body. That's what you will do when you practice at home. You will first inflate the balloon outside of the body and then see how many pumps you need to get to, counting the pumps, especially if you're using this Epino, which does not have a gauge like this one. If you're using an Epino that has a gauge, then you can just use the number of the gauge to know where you need to get to reach 35 centimeters circumference or 10 centimeters diameter. So for the purposes of both these Epinos, we are going to blow up the one with the gauge and we are going to count the pumps in order to know how many pumps we need to get to in order to reach 35 centimeters circumference. So let's begin now. The gauge is on 0, as you can see, and we're going to start counting. 1, 2, 3. Whoops, whoops, whoops. First, you need to close the valve. Close the valve. Gauge is at 0, and we will begin to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Before we continue pumping, it's important to note that you will not be going to 35 centimeters circumference, 10 centimeters diameter in the first go. You're going to slowly, incrementally, over the few weeks that you have the Epino, you'll build yourself up to 10 centimeters, right? So we got to 20 and we are at 14 on the gauge. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Let's measure it in the meantime and see how far we have to still go. So we're at 40 pumps, and at the widest part of the Epino, you'll be measuring it, and we are at 32 centimeters and 40 pumps. 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. Let's see if we are at where we need to be. And we are at 35 centimeters. Great. So that is the limit you need to get to. Anything between 30 and 35 centimeters is very good. And on the little gauge, it is at 21 at that marker, as you can see. And so depending on how brave you feel on the day, and this is something that you should start to do with every time you use the Epino, is to start to gently and consciously push this balloon out into your hand. So there's definitely a measure of control as you use it to push it out into your hand, right? Very, very gently. It will come out this way, not that way. It will come out this way, and you'll hold it over the vagina and you will gently push this balloon out. By doing it in this way, you are simulating what it feels like to push a baby's head out. And this you can do with a measure of control because your hand is there, gently guiding its way out. It is such an incredible tool that it will lower the chances of tearing, lower the need for an episiotomy if the baby is in a good position for birth. So placing your hand there slows down the expulsion rate. as you will do on the day you give birth. You can also put your hand there and just slowly feel the baby coming down and out if you want to. Totally, you can. It's your body, your birth. You can put your hand there. Meet your baby. You can be the first one to touch your baby's head. Also included in the little kit is this little paper gauge, which is a measuring template. You can see. And it's got markings from 0 to 10 centimeters, which means you can also very inaccurately measure the diameter of the balloon. That's why it's so much better to use a measuring tape. So that's a very good handy thing to get when you're using the Epino. So there are 3 things I want you not to stress about and not to freak out when you are using the Epino. The first thing to note is that there might be some direct spotting after you have used the Epino, and that is because the pelvic floor is so rich in blood supply that using the Epino might compress some of those blood capillaries, because you can imagine this being on the inside of your pelvic floor, press out some of those blood capillaries, burst them, and it can cause a bit of spotting. But it's no biggie. There's so much blood to that area. A little bit of spotting after using the Epino is no problem at all. The second thing I don't want you to worry about is increased leucorrhea. Another word for that is vaginal discharge after you've used the Epino. You can just imagine the little folds of the pelvic floor are filled with vaginal discharge. And during the day, it just comes out incrementally. But when you are using the Epino, this acts like a flat iron and irons out all the folds of your pelvic floor, which can then cause all of that leucorrhea, all of that vaginal discharge to just run out all in one go. So you might worry, oh, this is my waters breaking. But actually, it definitely isn't. It's impossible to break your waters with this device. Completely impossible. So I want you to know that it is a completely safe and effective tool to use to prepare you mentally and physically for the sensation of pushing your baby's head out into the world. Another note while using the Epino, before you use it, is to set up the space so that it feels sacred. And it's a ritual that you engage with every single day. Even if you're doing the Perennial Massage, you would set up the space with a candle, some music, perhaps a relaxing to birth audio track playing in the background, and you're just breathing and going into the zone of your body, your birthing body, and connecting body and soul to what is happening in your body and with this Epino, and imagining what it will feel like on the day. And this is what it feels like. And it builds your confidence because each time you use it, it will feel a little bit more manageable, a little bit more easier to use. So go for it. Just give it a go. Contact a midwife in your area or a doula. They might have some Epinos spare that you can use. And it's totally fine to borrow an Epino in this way because you can soak this whole device in Milton. You would need to separate the pipe from the pump, and this whole device, even this side, can be soaked in Milton. And then every time you use the Epino, you just use it with a condom over it. And in between uses, while you've got the Epino, you would wash the pipe and the balloon. You don't have to separate it, with some warm soapy water. That's all. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. So in closing, I'd like to thank Sister Susan Lees of Cape Town, an amazing independent midwife in the city, for helping me with this content for this video. So I hope you find it helpful. Lots of love from Susan and me, and good luck using your Epino and preparing your perineum for childbirth.